Hello everyone! Today I would like to discuss with you one of my favorite films of all time, directed by one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, and that is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, directed by Stanley Kramer.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
The film came out in 1967, starring legendary actors Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, and Sidney Poitier. It was a critically acclaimed film nominated for 10 Oscars and winning 2, for Best Actress for Katharine Hepburn and Best Original Screenplay. Before I delve into why I love this movie so much and why it is such a well-known and beloved film, I just want to specifically discuss this Blu-ray release put out by Twilight Time. Twilight Time is a small home media distribution company that has made certain licensing deals with larger studios, in this case specifically Sony Pictures. Sony Pictures owns Columbia Pictures, and Columbia Pictures is a very old, very storied film studio. By owning Columbia Pictures, they own the rights to all of their back catalog of films going all the way back to the 1920s. Through the licensing deal with Sony, Twilight Time has the ability to put out a lot of the old Columbia Pictures films on Blu-ray, and Sony, in their kind of brilliantness, has scanned a lot of their old films in 4K, basically meaning that they have taken all of the old film prints that they have, the masters and stuff like that, and they have given them gorgeous, brand new scans. So this Blu-ray looks absolutely stunning. I was shocked how detailed, how the colors just popped off the screen for a film that's nearly 50 years old, that was shot on probably 35mm film, and for a lot of cinephiles out there, you know that film over time doesn't age well unless, of course, it's preserved properly. And I have to give credit to the people over at Sony Pictures because they have preserved a lot of their back catalog of films very, very well. So this release here carries over all of the special features from the 40th anniversary DVD, which I happen to have right here. This is something I bought a few years ago, and I didn't know that they would eventually put out a Blu-ray release, but I'm glad that they did because it looks immensely better than this standard def disc. And that's not saying that this is something I wouldn't recommend people to buy if they don't have Blu-ray players. I would say get this film whichever way that you personally prefer viewing films. But for me personally, the Blu-ray blows this out of the water. Like I was saying, all of the extras from the DVD I just showed you are on this release as well. And there's one thing I do want to say about Twilight Time that I guess kind of is maybe a bit of a problem for certain collectors like myself, is that you can only really find their releases through their website, twilighttime.com. I'll put a link below so you can check out their catalog, because they've been putting out releases now for a number of years. A lot of them are films that cinephiles really want in their collection, but you can only find them through their website, and they are quite expensive. Not an astronomical amount expensive, but they're more expensive than you would find in like Amazon or a brick and mortar store or something like that. But specifically for the Sony films that they have, the Columbia films that they have, the transfers are worth every penny, specifically if you understand the visual medium of Blu-ray and stuff like that. You will really get your money's worth when it comes to these releases. Fortunately, they recently had this on sale for a price that was shockingly cheap for them at $14.95. So immediately I snagged this up because their releases are a limited number. Most of their releases are only limited to 3,000 copies. So once they're sold out, they are gone, and you're going to have to try to track them down on eBay and pay an even more astronomical amount than you would pay from their website. Occasionally they'll have sales, so pay attention to that, specifically if you are a collector. They do have a Facebook page which they readily update in terms of which titles they are running out on, which is very important because, like I said, the limited number makes these more valuable. Also, sometimes they will have re-releases of titles that have since been out of print. Films like The Big Heat or Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia or The Train. They're all re-releasing those, so grab those up when you can if you don't already have them. What's also nice about this release is that it actually does come with an insert which has an essay about the film, which is very kind of refreshing and nice to see because for those of you who regularly buy films on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever, there's really no longer any inserts. There used to be just chapter listings or perhaps maybe like art cards or posters or something like that. Now there's nothing. There's zilch, nothing. Even for TV shows on DVD and Blu-ray, there are very rarely episode guides and stuff like that, so it was nice to see that they included an insert in this. Now on to the film. Like I said, this film came out in 1967, so we are breaching the 50-year mark of when it came out. And what is very interesting about this film is that it deals with very social conscious themes, specifically that of race and I would dare say generation gaps and the times that are changing socially in the United States, because Stanley Kramer was a director, producer, writer who made very, very socially conscientious films. For example, in his film Inherit the Wind, which was based on a play, it discusses evolution versus creationism, something that is still a hotly debated thing today. And in this film, he discusses racial themes in society, racial themes that are, as you see today, are still readily talked about, still hotly debated, still fought over. So it's very interesting to see how the themes in this film exist today. And that's where I feel the film is a very important part of American cinema. So to give you a quick synopsis of the plot, I won't spoil the film at all. Even though it is 50 years old, I still am not in favor of spoiling films regardless of how old they are, because there are a lot of new young cinephiles who are just coming up and learning about these types of films. And I don't want to spoil it for them, because, you know, I want them to discover these great films on their own. So, for this film, the plot is this. Sidney Poitier and the daughter of Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy's character, coincidentally, that actress named Catherine Houghton is the niece of Katharine Hepburn. That's a very interesting kind of trivia fact. But anywho, they fall in love while she is in Hawaii, and they want to get married. But it is the 1960s, there's a lot of racial tension because of the civil rights movement, and things like that in the United States, so it is a very controversial thing. And when she brings this African-American man home to meet her parents, things obviously get complicated from there. But what is interesting about Sidney Poitier's character is that he is a very distinguished person. He is a doctor. He's a doctor who travels the world. I believe he is kind of a Doctors Without Borders types of thing. So he's a very well-respected physician. He has won all kinds of awards and stuff like that, so it's very interesting how they portray his character. What commences in this film after she brings home Sidney Poitier's character is kind of a battle of wills, a elongated discussion about do the parents approve or disapprove of this marriage, and they struggle with this, and it's not so much the fact that Sidney Poitier is an African-American man, it's how the world will receive this couple. You know, they have fear for their well-being as a couple because of the racially tense times that they live in, all the ridicule they will get because of that. And at the time of this film, while they were making it, it was illegal for a white person and a black person to be married in the United States in some states. So it was very interesting, the line that Stanley Kramer was towing in terms of discussion of contemporary themes of his time. But by the time the film came out, those laws prohibiting interracial marriage were deemed wrong by the Supreme Court. So there's a lot of things in this film, while they were making it, that were overturned by the time the film came out. A lot of laws that they talked about, a lot of kind of social things that they talked about had changed by the time this film came out. I must talk about the acting in this film, because like I said, you had three all-time legendary actors in this film, and Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy, and Sidney Poitier, and they are given such fantastic dialogue to work with in this film. Like I said, the screenplay did win an Oscar. The screenplay was written by William Rose, who would also write a later Stanley Kramer picture called It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. which is a wonderful film that I'll probably discuss in a later review. Like I was saying, the actors in this film are giving great dialogue, and they are able to deliver such wonderful, heartfelt, organic performances. Because in this film, you see that these people struggle with this idea. They struggle with the changing times, because the 60s was a time in the United States for great social change, as a lot of people may know. And the films that came out during that time were kind of a reflection of it, specifically films done by Stanley Kramer. Very much a reflection of the social themes of the time, like I've already said numerous times. Very interesting to note that this is the great Spencer Tracy's last film. Actually, he was so ill while they were making this film that they actually had two different screenplays. One with him not in the film, and one with him in the film, just in case he passed away while they were filming. That is how sick he was, which is kind of astonishing to think about, because he did such a fantastic performance in this film that you wouldn't even notice that he was so ill. Unfortunately, he died, I think, a mere 17 days after this film was complete. And it's also very interesting in this film because Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy had a kind of multi-decade relationship with one another, a romantic relationship with one another. And so you see in this film there are moments where Spencer Tracy goes through these soliloquies or monologues, and you just see Katharine Hepburn crying or tears welling up in her eyes. It's because she knows how sick he is. She knows how difficult this was for him. I mean, it's really an emotional film if you factor in those extenuating circumstances. If you understand that this is the last great performance from one of the greatest actors of all time. Katharine Hepburn did win an Oscar for her performance in this film. She is one of the greatest actresses of all time. Not only in my opinion, but I think the film community in general. She is the only actress, I believe, to win 4 Oscars in her career. That may be eclipsed eventually, probably by Meryl Streep or someone like that, but Katharine Hepburn is one of the all-time actresses and one of the all-time influences in acting. As much as I love this film, and as you can tell just by all of the great things I've said about it, it is not a perfect film. Like I said, it is also part of the time in which it came out, so that kind of takes away a little bit from it, specifically if you view it from a modern lens, which I typically don't do with older films. You have to keep older films within the context of when they came out. Even that being said, this film, in my opinion, is an all-time classic. Stanley Kramer is one of the all-time great socially conscientious filmmakers, and I would highly recommend this film for fans of classic film and fans of contemporary film. Before I let you guys go, I want to show you what the inside of this packaging looks like. It's not very special in any way, but it's nice to see the differences in terms of packaging when it comes to different companies, because as you will see as I do a lot of these reviews, each kind of studio has their own way of presenting their films. Some are a little lazier than others, but I digress. As you can see, it comes in a clear Blu-ray case, which is kind of a new thing for Twilight Time. Before, they were just coming in the regular blue Blu-ray cases, but they've since changed it up, I believe, over the last year or so with their releases. So here on the front you get, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and it says the limited series, which, like I said earlier, they are limited to 3,000. And it opens up, standard Blu-ray case. But inside you get the Blu-ray disc, and here is the insert as well. On the back, you get a list of the special features, a description of the film, as well as certain blurbs about how great the film is. And of course, down here, the usual credits. Here is a closer look at the booklet that comes with the film. The back is kind of an original poster. There is Sidney Poitier and Katharine Hepburn. And what is really nice here is that with the clear packaging, they've actually included an inner photo here. It's a lovely, kind of a still frame photo of when Sidney Poitier's character is introduced to Spencer Tracy. This has been my review of the classic film Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, directed by Stanley Kramer, as well as a look at the Twilight Time Blu-ray release. If you like this video, please stick around because I plan on doing a lot more reviews of classic films as well as taking a look at their DVD and Blu-ray releases.